research, fraudulent research. In fact, we're doing a research on researches. So we're coming with good information for you. Just relax. You're going to get it. You'll love it. These things they call researches, with which they've deceived a lot of people in the world. You'll get to know. Watch this.
For decades, plastic has been a vital part of life. Affordable, durable, versatile. But today, a global movement is calling for its end.
We need collective action to develop viable and sustainable substitute for plastics.
That represents an ambitious starting point to end plastic pollution.
What if, behind the push to ban plastic production, lies another agenda? An agenda that could cripple economies across Africa and Asia, deepen dependency on the West, and widen the global inequality gap.
So the packaging of food with plastics, bottling of water with plastics, and so on and so forth, should be stopped. Well, I'm here to tell you, it's a lie. It's a deception. And the earlier you realize it, the better.
Plastics have shaped the modern world, but few know their story goes back further than they think. In 1856, Alexander Parkes invented the first plastic. This innovation laid the groundwork for a revolution. By 1909, Bakelite was patented, the first fully synthetic plastic, hailed as a miracle material. Suddenly, radios, switches, and toys could be mass-produced affordably. Soon, the world's chemical giants entered the stage. DuPont unveiled neoprene in 1931, nylon by 1935.
By a miracle of modern science, such commonplace things as coal, water, and air have been transformed into threads more elastic than silk.
And polyester by 1950. ICI developed Perspex and polyethylene. Dow introduced polystyrene in 1954. Each invention opened doors, from replacing scarce natural materials to transforming industrial waste into valuable products. Through the 1950s and 60s, plastics became symbols of modern life. Cellophane promised sterile safety. Nylon revolutionized clothing. Tupperware filled homes. Single-use plastics were convenient. Plastic became woven into every sector: healthcare, construction, technology, and packaging. It saved lives, reduced costs, and enabled innovation at scales never imagined. But now the very material once heralded as a symbol of human ingenuity is under attack. Suddenly, plastics are labeled the enemy, banned, taxed, with the move to replace with costlier, less durable alternatives. It begs the question, if plastics made life safer, cheaper, cleaner, and more efficient, why the global push to get rid of them now?
Today, the Global Plastic Action Partnership, it was founded in 2018 with the vision to support countries by 2025 to implement action against plastic pollution. We're talking about the new Global Treaty on Plastics. This treaty aims to limit the production of unnecessary plastic.
Reject single-use plastic. Refuse what you can't reuse.
There's a war on plastics, microplastics. And there are many people who think that it's an important thing to get rid of plastics.
Under the banner of environmentalism, Western powers and international agencies are demanding an end to plastic production worldwide.
Because they tell us now that microplastics are very dangerous.
We now have plastics in breast milk, plastics in every organ of the body, and plastics in our brain.
In other health news tonight, there's concern that plastic could be inside of our blood.
Microplastics in the air may be leading to lung and colon cancers, according to a new study.
There's nothing wrong with the plastics. It's fake research. It's fake.
The alleged discovery of microplastics in human brain tissue has created panic across the globe, with the fake news media pandering to this false narrative.
But now, for what seems to be the first time, these microscopic pollutants have been found in tissue in the human brain.
Fake data to fool the world.
But beneath the surface of this narrative, a different picture begins to emerge. Several well-meaning scientists have raised red flags about the so-called research methods, its very small sample size, and the ever-present risk of contamination. Dr. Oliver Jones, a professor of chemistry, RMIT University, stated in an article published in the science media the following concerns. The first problem? The sample size. The study tested just 52 brain samples, 28 from 2016 and 24 from 2024. With such a small and limited pool, can we really draw any meaningful conclusions about the presence of microplastics, especially on a global scale? Then there are the inconsistencies in the data itself. The study's main analysis method, using pyrolysis gas chromatography mass spectrometry, raises further concerns. This method is known to give false positives, especially when dealing with brain tissue, which is primarily made of fat. Fats in the brain can mimic the results of polyethylene, the plastic identified in the study. This was not addressed in the published research. Handling and analyzing samples can introduce plastic particles from lab equipment, gloves, or even the very air we breathe. Even if microplastics were able to reach the brain, they would first need to navigate several barriers, beginning with the gut, then the bloodstream, and ultimately the blood-brain barrier. This process has yet to be proven. So, why the urgency to push the narrative that plastics pose a threat to human health when there is absolutely no conclusive evidence to support it?
Possibilities, not direct evidence. And this is just to make the point, because I think we often forget, even if we breathed it, and there was a lot of it, even if we ate it and it went into our stomach, the particle sizes they have located within food and within air are too big, quite frankly, to be responsible to enter the body. So again, we have a gap. We have plausibility, people detecting things in tissues, but it doesn't add up. It's not quite as coherent a picture as I think people would like us to see. So this is where we are. What happens after that is the hunt is on in every tissue and every body fluid that you can lay your hands on to demonstrate that you can identify a microplastic or polymer within it. And that becomes pretty dangerous science, because the presence of a chemical, or specifically the presence of a chemical physical entity, which is a chemical within a tissue, does not simplistically equate to pathology or to a health effect, yes? It's only part of the question. It only demonstrates that there is the feasibility of getting there. And anyway, if we have had an explosion in plastic production since the 1950s, where are all the health effects? Why have we not picked up on them?
So there's 28 studies in the world. We're talking Canada, New Zealand, we're talking America. There's one from Clemson. I've got several of them up on my website. So it boggles my mind that people are saying that these plastic bags are the bad solution, when every single study ever done shows that they're the actual least harmful choice. So people are picking paper, which is much, much worse. And it's just anti-scientific.
Firstly, find out who are the sponsors of those who are going around and talking about plastics and why they're dangerous. Find out who are their sponsors.
Powerful groups like the World Wildlife Fund, Break Free from Plastic, and financial giants tied to the IMF and World Economic Forum are driving the global push to end plastic production.
And that's our goal. It's to turn off the tap. It's to stop the over 8 million tons of plastic from flowing into the ocean to begin with, and lift people out of poverty in the process. And we ask you, if you represent a country Invite us in. Open your border. Work with us.
While they claim it's for the environment, their campaigns, heavily funded by the United Nations and One World Government globalist foundations, threaten to cripple industries in Africa and Asia.
This is why in Busan, you must deliver a treaty that is ambitious, credible, and just. An agreement that addresses the life cycle of plastics, tackling single-use and short-lived plastics, waste management, and measures to phase out plastic and promote alternative materials.
For countries considering signing an agreement through a United Nations global treaty, I believe we may be heading towards something that could be catastrophic for our economy, thus affecting everyone.
Plastics is the key material and the solution for a more sustainable world. They make mobility more lightweight, they preserve food, and they also help us to produce renewable energies.
But what actually happens when microplastics get into our body? What is the real health risk? First, gastrointestinal tract. A lot of the microplastics we get are from water. So that's going to go down to our gut. Now, first thing, any particle larger than 150 micrometers is excreted without any absorption. Smaller than that, there is a small risk that it can be absorbed into the bloodstream. So far, we only have rat studies where a large amount of microplastic exposure showed some effort on gut microbe health, but we do not have evidence for that in humans.
We will repeal the federal plastics ban, including the ban on plastic straws, checkout bags, food containers, and cutlery, because consumers and businesses should be free to choose what works best for them. We will eliminate labeling and packaging requirements that raise the cost of fresh produce and groceries by up to 34%, because families shouldn't have to pay more to eat healthy. We will protect restaurants, grocers, and low-income Canadians from costly, one-size-fits-all packaging rules that hit the people who can least afford it, causing them to pay the most.
Always remember that people make a living off of fear and distraction, or in other words, scaring the crap out of you. But keep in mind that things are rarely as bad as other people make it seem. Plastic is used in thousands of applications, which you can't argue are a bad thing. From applications like IV systems to life rafts, it's used in bulletproof glass, and it occupies about 70% of a modern vehicle. And if somebody tells you something differently, chances are they're probably trying to sell you something.
Why are they against plastics? It's simple. Because it's cheap. And so you don't have to import. Hey, think about this. You're importing, many countries in Africa import paper. They import paper. Now they tell you use paper. You're going to start importing paper for packaging of your food. Then they tell you go aluminum for your water. Because that means you're going to import.
Between the West and Africa in basically a millennia. I mean, the relationship was ruthlessly extractive 800 years ago, and it's ruthlessly extractive now. And you can't help but recognize that keeping things this way simply must not only be important to the West, but literally it must be the most important thing to the West. It's so important to them that they have always maintained this status quo no matter what else changes in the world. They're dedicated to the subjugation and the exploitation of Africa more than they're dedicated to anything else. Everything else is allowed to change except for this. This must never change. And it's not difficult to see why. I mean, it's the subjugation and the exploitation of Africa that has enabled the West to impersonate a superior civilization.
And everything you are as a nation, everything that you have and that you become independent with, they want to take away from you.
The sheer survival of the World Bank, IMF, is based on the fact that African countries and many other developing countries do not succeed. Their success is based on our failure. So let's look at an Africa that must be free to take care of herself, an Africa that's free from exploitation from outsiders. The multinationals who are stealing from Africa every day in broad daylight. I use an example of the DRC. If you ever fly very low over the DRC, you'll see tarmacs in the jungle. You'll see 747s flying into DRC, picking up minerals and flying right up. The same multinationals are responsible for arming young people and giving them MK-16s. Because why? Their satellites in the skies are telling them where that village is. There are lots of diamonds.
If plastics are banned, what replaces them? Paper? Glass? Biodegradable alternatives? These materials are not cheap. They require infrastructure, technology, and resources that many African and Asian countries do not have or cannot afford. Without local plastic production, nations will be forced to import alternatives from Western manufacturers, paying more, depending more, and producing less.
You're getting plastics in your country. They're not getting money from it. There's nothing wrong with the plastics. There's nothing wrong with it. It's fake research. It's fake. It's fake research. Don't agree with them.
The idea that there was this giant trash island in the ocean was one of the things that got so many people paying attention to ocean plastic in the first place. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch is in the open ocean. You cannot see land anywhere nearby. So when you see pictures like this, where there's clearly mountains or maybe islands in the background, that is obviously not the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. And then when you start looking, you see that the majority of these are fake. Most of these are probably honest mistakes, but then there are other ones which are obviously photoshopped, like this one, which is clearly just using a picture of a landfill or something. The question here is, what does this thing actually look like if it doesn't look like any of this? And why is everyone using photos of it that are of something else?
So I'm looking at a table right here, which is, the EPA's definition of what's toxic and what's less toxic. And if we look at plastics, like polyethylene, polypropylene, PET, and so forth, we find that they're the safest things. So there are 4 categories of toxicity. They're in the safest category that there is. So they're as safe as things we have on our table. They're safer than table salt, for example. That's the category that these plastics are in. They're literally so safe you could eat them every day and nothing would happen to you. So whereas if you look at things like copper metal, which drinking water pipes are made of, they're in the most toxic category. So there are ways of telling what's toxic, what isn't toxic. There are literally numbers that define how much of this you can ingest and have a problem or not have a problem. And plastics are simply non-toxic. So for somebody to just make up in his bathtub one day, this is toxic and I decree it so. He's not Julius Caesar, right? I mean, there are actual ways, and scientists have been studying this for 50 years, right? And it's all documented.
Belgian researchers tested 39 brands of straws for forever chemicals that take a long time to process out of your body. They found that those chemicals were much more prominent in straws made from paper or bamboo, and more likely to be found in paper straws. So if you look at this chart, all of these like bars full of chemicals that can get into your body, you look along the top, are in paper, glass, bamboo. But what about microplastics? Because Oxford University told us that the amount of microplastics would go up and up and up by 2050. Well, in the 2014 study, they also found that 100 times less microplastics were found than expected. So where does it all go? Well, it turns out larger plastics get broken down into small particles, digested by sea life, and they sink into fecal pellets, which isn't good for animals at all, but a lot of it could also dissolve by the sun before it ever gets to the animals. And in fact, in 2019, researchers found that they could simulate plastics before being broken down into carbon dioxide and dissolving as organic carbon. So we don't have a lot of research that plastic is bad for the earth or bad for our bodies or bad for the sea, but we're spending all of this time and effort writing legislation to take it out of our lives when we may in fact be doing worse.
If plastics are banned, what replaces them?
Paper or aluminum.
There are 5 such studies on drink containers that you just mentioned, and they all say that the plastic bottle causes least harm. So why would you ever go to metal or glass, which is scientifically proven to cause vastly more harm? And I'm not just talking about CO2, vastly more fossil fuel burned, because you need a lot of energy to make to melt glass and metal, and more of the other things as well, like eutrophication and acid rain and so forth. when you switch to an alternative, you end up with more waste, more harm in almost every parameter you can measure.
Even though aluminum is one of the most abundant metals on Earth's crust, it's not so easy to extract. It's hidden away in this bauxite ore. Up to 5 tons of bauxite might need to be mined in order to get 1 ton of aluminum. And to separate the aluminum from the bauxite, it goes through a chemical process that leaves behind a toxic red sludge. Making aluminum also releases super potent greenhouse gases called perfluorocarbons. It actually takes about twice as much energy to produce new aluminum as it does to produce new plastic.
They compare plastic packaging to things like food, soap, milk, meat, furniture, clothes, carpet, to alternatives, viable alternatives like paper, steel, cotton, wool, copper, fiberglass, and concrete. In every single case, they find that plastic has the lowest carbon footprint.
So if developing nations stop producing plastic and have to import expensive alternatives, who profits? Control. Once again, Africa and Asia will become markets for Western exports, paying more for products they once produced cheaply.
You know, they like to talk about the countries that they have deceived enough to get rid of their plastics. Plastic is cheap, it's light. It is not near poisonous as they say. Why aren't they talking about fluoride? The same people.
Banning plastic is not the answer. Plastics are lifelines in many regions of the world, essential for packaging, healthcare, food storage, sanitation, and low-cost manufacturing. Eliminating them without viable alternatives is not environmental justice, it's economic sabotage. The real solution is not in shutting down industries, it's in building better systems. It's in investing in recycling infrastructure. It's in developing local innovations that turn waste into wealth. It's in empowering local industries to create sustainable models that work for their people, their economies, their future. We must stand for solutions that uplift, not policies that lock down, because true environmental progress leaves no nation behind.
In 2020, I said, let the countries have their own researchers. I mean, if they come up with, there's a research, hey, we're intelligent enough. We've got people here. We have schools, we have universities. What are they doing? We have scientists in our country. Let's commission them to check the results. Do the report yourself. Get the research yourself. And find out if it's true. No, we just want it downloaded to us. And then we're told, this is it. And we follow. Why did we go to school if we went to school? Hey, why did you go to school? To be able to question information. And to be able to create solutions. Create solutions. If we raise our people to think like that, that's the way they will be. But if we raise them to be dependent on information from other sources, then they'll always be slaves.
The war on plastics is a war with hidden fronts. A war that, if unchecked, could rob millions of their industries, their jobs, their economic sovereignty. The future of sustainability cannot be built on dependency. It must be built on freedom.
Wonderful. So I hope that that was informative enough and that you gained some insight. So think that the World Economic Forum is trying to help you? Really? That's like the devil promising salvation. You can't believe him. You can't believe him. So let's not look at the countries where they already are banning them. Remember who the leaders of those countries are. They're all supporters of COVID-19. Every country where they've banned plastics, they're supporters of COVID-19. And often they start from a trickish perspective. They say single-use plastics is what they are against. Single-use plastics. But no, it's just their entry point. And one other reason, and you have to understand this, there's a lot of promise for new uses of plastics that'll actually help in several areas like energy that they've been working hard about. You're going to become self-sustaining. You know, energy dependency will be gone. They know that this is coming, and they want to stop it before you discover what more you can do with plastics. They already know, because these are solutions that have already come up. And before nations in Africa and Asia get to realize that they can do this themselves, because they have all the raw materials there, they want to make sure they cut you off before you have time to build. Don't let it happen.
Yes, sir.
So I'm by this calling on local governments, state governments, federal governments to reject this attack on plastics. Refuse to let it happen. And if you already signed on to it being pushed by the WEF, the fake World Economic Forum, if you already pushed into it, just don't do it. Just don't do it, because I can tell you that the World Economic Forum is dead.
Yes, sir.
It's dead. Just watch. It's finished. It's dead.
Yes, sir.
So no point to be afraid of them. No point to care about them. We just need Guterres to go home.
Yes, sir.
He's doing very bad things with the United Nations. The United Nations organization. He's doing bad things. And I said before, it's not what he's not doing, because some people say he ought to be doing this or that. I said, it's not what he's not doing that is bad. It's what he is doing. The guy is more dangerous active. Or rather, he's not doing anything. But he's doing really bad things. So he's not serving the nations.